To begin with, the first department or first section I wanted to talk about is just the general government section. And those are usually projects that are for public safety, general government, community development, the library, things like that. And in this year's CIP, we had 3 projects that we highlighted that I wanted to talk a little bit about what might have changed from the current year. And yet I wanted to specifically talk about 2023-24, the fiscal year we're in right now. So regarding the column that's 22-23, those are the projects that were done or started in last fiscal year, which may be continuing over to this fiscal year and might take some amendments from you. But in reality, most of those projects have either been started or finished or continue to move forward. So hopefully we don't have to address much of those in the 22-23, but more in the 23-24. And we have borrowed those funds for the 23-24 as well. So in 23-24 year, the only change that was made in this particular year, well, there was 3 changes actually, but the in this particular 23-24, if you were to look down about the 4th from the bottom, it says Town Center Promenade. And in the plan that you adopted this past January, we had $250,000 in the plan for 23-24. We pushed that back to 24-25. And as David has explained to me, that promenade has to do with the next set of buildings that would be, and David, if I'm not right, stop me, but the next set of buildings that would be built on this corner out here, the town center, and the actual promenade portion of the walkway that we would do. We have the money in escrow for those, still from the original project, but we moved it out of here based on the fact that no building permits have been taken out for those buildings on that corner, so we certainly don't think it will probably get done to the point of the promenade we're happening before the end of fiscal year 24. We've moved it out 1 year to 24-25. The other change in 23-24, where it talks about 50-55 Merle Hay Road redevelopment grading. We originally had planned for $600,000 in 23-24 and $600,000 in 24-25, which would have been when the city was doing the grading and potentially marketing that property, which is the property down there by Bombers. And obviously, a private developer is doing that, and as part of this redevelopment grant, the funding for grading was included in that redevelopment grant. So instead of $600,000 in 23-24 and 24-25 as adopted, we put all $1.2 million of it in 23-24. And so the only other change made in the 5-year plan at this point under general government was the Fire Station 38 addition. Originally, we had put in $150,000 for design and planning back in 22-23, which, as you know, you did not do. And then we had construction of $2.15 million in 24-25. The fire chief has suggested that I move that planning of $150,000 out to 26-27, and that whatever the construction amount or construction estimate would be, as he gets those numbers revised and refined, will be in the 28-29 CIP that we work on here in a few months. So those are the only changes under general government. Do you have any questions about that particular area of the CIP before I move on?
Sure, I do. With the passing of the new 28E with regard to fire, and I see several different emergency vehicles in there. Are any of those costs now going to change or be split at all between that, or do we just
Mike, you might want to help me here, but most of the capital projects will be continued to be going forward will be a purchase by the district, and debt will be shared by the formula percentages. So, Johnston and Grimes will be issuing the debt based on our allocation formula. But as far as the amount and what's in here, I did not change those. We have already borrowed the money for the ambulance in the 23-24. We've already ordered, Chief Clark, I believe you're here, right?
Yes.
We have already ordered both the aerial truck and the fire. We've already been ordered because we're at 50, what did you tell me, 56 months?
They were 36 at the time we ordered, now they will be about 48 to 52 months.
They're now up to 48 to 52 months. So they've been ordered. When we get them and when we actually have to pay the piper, so to speak, we'll have to work through the bonding issues with Grimes and us as far as the formula.
Thank you for that. The amounts listed on here is the total amount.
Yes, correct, yes.
Thank you.
And Councilmember Burkhart, one of the things to keep in mind too is we're working through how we're going to reflect that in the CIP and all of our financials. But the other component is there is equipment in the Grimes CIP that we're actually going to fold into our CIP. So there's going to be some amendments, and that equipment, as we work through the entire CIP process, will get reflected. So there are some purchases they have in sure that we will not plan. So in the end, it may actually work out. Very expensive rescue truck, not as expensive. So there may not be cost savings. And so that's one of the components that we know we have to work through as we're working through the CIP this year.
That sounds great. I mean, obviously, if you're giving us an update, we want to be as transparent as possible with all of those.
And that's why specifically tonight, I want to make sure if you looked at the budget calendar we sent out to you folks, that tonight truly is about making sure you understand what's happening in this fiscal year, 23-24 with capital projects. And as we work into working on the CIP for the next 5 years, here in the coming weeks, month, we'll be talking about all that even more so. Okay.
So just Teresa, real quick on that 50-55 related redevelopment grading. So the developer is doing the grading, but we're providing them a cost, we're helping them cover the cost of that.
Well, part of what, how do I explain this? I guess there was two components to the pre-development grant, which all occurred after this 600 and 600,000. And so to date, I just combined the two because that's about what we paid in our first portion of the pre-development grant. We didn't have to borrow that money.
But we're not paying this out of TIP, we're paying this out of.
We paid the first portion out of the proceeds of the sale of the property.
So
The next portion, second portion of the development agreement or pre-development agreement will be coming out of TIP. That is not on.
So one thing that might be, this is a great document, but that might be helpful is to maybe add a category that shows the funding source where it's coming from.
Yeah, and I would have had those in other reports, obviously. I was trying to figure out how to just condense a little bit just to talk about projects.
Yeah.
But I can certainly add that.
That would be just sort of because when I saw that, I thought, oh, is that the thing out of that? But it's still.
That's why I pointed out at the beginning when I started talking, is that we've already borrowed what we're gonna borrow for 24. With our 2023 GEO bond, we borrowed what we're gonna borrow for GEO bond. Okay, so we'll move on to the parks portion. And a couple things, if you want to start, the very first item is the development of the Johnston Commons project. And in the CIP that you adopted, we had a 385, oh, first of all, I should back up, excuse me. The only project that is affected in this 23-24 year has been the Crown Point renovation project. which is the fourth project down. And I highlighted all 3 years of those dollar amounts because I specifically put in here the $1,358,527 is the amount of ARPA funds that she put towards this project. The $1,650,000 that's going towards this project in 23-24 are remaining TIF funds in TIF 3. And then the remaining $3.1 million in fiscal year 25 is the amount you would have to borrow if we did the entire project conceptually that was brought to you folks, I can't remember when, month ago or so. So you haven't accepted that project design, you haven't did that project, any of that, but that's the $24-25 amount. So I have just put in what the maximum would be, okay?
And that would be funded through general, that,
Yes. So now if we, so the rest of the projects that John has listed for 23-24, nothing changed on any of those other 4 projects that had funding, included in them. We've either borrowed that money or we had additional money available from other projects, but those have all been put in the budget and are included, for moving forward. But the first project, development of Johnston Commons, you'll see that, the project, when it was adopted last year, we had $385,000 in 25-26 and $700,000 in 27-28. The $385,000 figure was for a splash pad. That concept has kind of been thrown out. I don't know if that's quite the right term, but has been pushed back in the priorities with the park board. And so at this point, John told me, just take it out of it. So that's why it's highlighted and Xed out in 26, fiscal year 26. The other change then happened under Dewey Park improvements. And you'll see that in the original, you had 4 years worth of projects, 4 years worth of funding, and in year 26, 27, you had $350,000 worth of projects that you were going to possibly do. Those have been moved out to 28, 29, which you can't see yet. That is potentially the restroom portion. And if you remember, right, it's moved out there because maybe that's about the time we'll have sewer through east of Monet. So that's why that change was made. The other change, the North Park Development Annex area, $300,000 out in 27, 28. That too has been moved out yet another year because we don't have any development happening there, so we will have Union Park. And then the other change, the dog park, we have $250,000 for design in this fiscal year, and that is happening or getting started. But the actual construction, the $500,000 in 24, 25, we pushed that back to 25, 26 because we have realized that due to the water main project that Des Moines Water Works is going to be doing through the area and Bombers area, it's coming through part of the dog park area. And so the actual construction of the dog park can't happen until that water main has been added. It's not relocated, Matt, it's new, right?
correct.
It's a new big water main for us, and then Bombers will be further along. So we moved it out 1 year to 25, 26. So those are the park changes. Any questions for either I or John?
Teresa, I do have a question, and it concerns me greatly about the dog park and pushing that back. We have heard about a dog park and heard about a dog park and heard about a dog park. We've even relocated it to the other side of the road. The reality is, they're not going to believe us any longer about a dog park if we keep pushing it back. It's my understanding that Bombers is set to open next fall of 2024. I realize that puts us into that fiscal year. No, actually it doesn't. It would put us in still that 24 to 25. So they think anyway, I'm assuming if they're gonna be open, that that water main would already be in place. Why so much longer, especially if we already have a design on the dog park?
First of all, we do have the 250,000 that we're going to start the design, and we'll probably be able to get to some components of the dog park. The reason why they're going to be getting to the Bombers property before ours is it's a priority. So they're going to be starting that water main project to the west and moving the other direction. So they're trying to clear through Bombers as fast as they possibly can. So we're still looking at the exact location where it's going to go through the dog park, but we do know it's going to greatly impact it. And the last thing we want to do is construct something just to tear it back out. There's going to be an easement of approximately, 40 feet now?
40 to 50.
That they're going to need, so we know it's going to impact that area. So our goal is to have everything lined up, to go through the public meetings, make sure people can start seeing what the design is. If we have areas that we can go ahead and move forward, we'll use part of that 250,000 to do that. But then move forward once we know that the water main is complete and it won't impact that project.
Thank you.
We'll move on to roadway projects, and I guess I thought I'd have the holster, but I really don't. We actually just have two projects that we want to talk about regarding, in 23-24, there was actually only one project, and the very last project listed Highway 141 interchange. We had $750,000 in the 22-23 budget. It actually came in as estimate from the engineers or the planning design contract at $800,000. And although we might have started in 23-24, it's really carrying on into this fiscal year. So all we did was kind of move that 750 over to 23-24, but we made it 800,000 that we knew it was going to cost. Again, those funds are coming from projects that have wrapped up and that we have additional funds for. And then the other change had to do with the new road to the kayak launch. And we have $183,470 that, Matt, I don't want to misspeak, but we had to buy some property, but what else are we having to do particularly with the 183?
I believe we were shifting that over to part of that pre-development grant.
Yeah, okay. So whatever we didn't use for the property purpose, we're gonna be using a little bit more towards Bombers, but originally in the CIP, we had 183,470, and then 1,716,530 for the road. Again, Bombers is doing all of that, so it's down to zero. So, I really like to see that. Any questions about road projects?
The Northwest 54th Avenue Road guy,
Oh, yes.
75,000, 425,000, I know that was. I have significant doubts and concerns about whether we need to do that project, so I just want to make sure that I'd like for us to have a conversation, maybe the next time we're part of the CIP, about why we're continuing to do that project. I think we need to let them look at some of the crossing, figuring out the crossing between the Clarkson Park and the elementary school. But the road part of it at Maryland, I think we need to have some discussion about. So anyway, because the narrowing down occurs further to the west, and I think for Foxborough.
Correct, it's the deletion of the turn lane into Foxborough off of 54. And then there'll be pinning on some medians so that we can move those stop signs in. Right now, it sits about 4 lanes across. That would help move those fold down stop signs in and have more visibility. We do have the engineer under contract. They were under contract about a month ago to continue that, and it's still Snyder and Associates, Mark Farrington. So we can have some of those discussions. I know that part of that discussion on that intersection is it's a stock condition now. And I know that in the past, we looked at trying to put some lights there. We need to figure out what the best treatment is for that intersection, because if we put like a rapid flashing beacon, that would be a yield condition versus the stock condition that the signs would have contradicting. So we do need to have some further discussions on the treatment on that intersection, and those will be forthcoming.
And when you're talking about the intersection, you're talking about the intersection between coming out of Blue Parks Park and Timber Ridge, not the intersection with the road diet.
That all encompasses the road diet from Foxborough to just east of.
But the narrowing of the road doesn't occur in front of Blue Parks and Timber Ridge, right? Or it occurs probably. That's the narrowing of the road. That's to me what I kind of, so at some point I just think we need to have a conversation about that, because I'm not sure what our value is we're getting out of it. If it remains to be a stop sign. So I really, before we spend money on the narrowing of the lanes, I want us to have a serious kind of discussion about that, because I had some real concerns.
We can do that right now. We've just met with the engineer, and they're putting out some equipment to get traffic counts. 2016, 2018 was the last time it took counts. So we're gonna take new counts to make sure that we still either have the same conditions, or if we have different conditions, we'll have to take that into effect. We'll bring those findings as well as the treatment back to council in a work session and have some further discussion.
Perfect, thank you, Matt. Appreciate it.
Okay, the next section then is sanitary sewer section. And we only made one modification here, and that was pushing the Bright Drainage Trunk Sanitary Sewer Project out. It currently was in 24-25 to 25-26. And both it, and if you look down below on the stormwater, the third one down said Bright Property Downstream Improvements. Those two projects, sanitary sewer and the stormwater, have to be done at the same time. So we first pushed both of those back, and I apologize, David Lording, I don't remember why we were able to push them back. Or Dave, or Matt, whoever. Toss up, huh?
Yeah, so, part of the issue, I think, from the stormwater perspective is we've constructed in Ridgedale Heights, there's a large detention basin that was constructed that's kind of mitigated downstream problems to an extent. So the stormwater project hasn't been as high on the priority because we're just not experiencing the erosion that we had in the past. That route to the stormwater is where sanitary sewer connections will be made to the neighborhood. And we also kind of, so we want to do that work at the same time. We also haven't had the demand from the neighborhood of asking for that sanitary sewer at this time. So we're just pushing that back just because we're got a situation where neither are really pressing at this moment. So.
In that area would service, the sanitary sewer service would service 93rd, 95th, and 98th Street. They're just on the south side of 70th.
When you call it the Bright Drainage Way, that is not a good description.
Yeah,
And I think Bright, I think of like North Place.
That's exactly where it is. So the large pond that was constructed north of the high school. So that is kind of the start of that drainage way.
But going to the east. And
Correct.
Okay. But it's the reason we're paying for it. Because
Yes.
Questions about either storm sewer or stormwater or sanitary sewer? Okay, so then the last section that we discussed with staff was the water section. And I feel like we've talked about this quite a bit lately, honestly. But if you look at the plan that you adopted, I have highlighted two green items. One, happens to be, the third from the bottom is a Hyperion Point water main anode retrofit. Pronounce that correctly?
Correct.
And Matt is telling me that we no longer need to do that.
We currently don't need that project at the moment. We were having some issues, some leaks on the water main that seemed to be kind of back to back with some corrosive soils on the old buckle iron main. We've not had those since our last main break, which was 5 years ago. So I think we're just gonna hold off. It is a low amount. We've talked, we do have funds in the operations. If that project did need to come back, we could fund that just through operation fund.
So that project's been in the CIP for years and it's just worked its way up to next year's, data, or 2 years from now, it's time to maybe take it off for now. And then the other, project that we pushed out either to 28, 29, or up further happened to be the water tower for the northwest annexation area. And, until we have the need for that water tower and more of a demonstration of the need forthcoming, we thought we might as well move that out, not have that in the plan for 4 years from now. On the right-hand side of your document, however, the Northwest Area Water Surface Extension Segment C, we did move that out, I believe, one. Here, I want to make sure it's not 2 years. Yes, we moved it out one, we moved it out 1 year, I think, based on what we feel will actually be occurring,
That in demand.
that. So, I don't know if you have any questions about any of these water projects? Any questions, council? I don't see. Okay, we'll be back, with, plan for some expansion.
Teresa, I just want to thank you for this arrangement, because in the past, you'd be explaining when up or went down. This was very easy to follow. So I highly recommend that your successor would take notes on this.
Finally got that.
Thank you.
Actually, and it'll be, again, in a new plan, because, the CIP will be a clear up next year. This is still in plan. So we'll see how it works, but, I'm not sure that my mouse is connected with this. Just leave it. Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is a presentation on the citywide traffic study. Matt?
There's nothing I can do about it right now.
What's that?
I said, there's nothing I can do about it right now.
Matt, I was having to, actually just look at the screen. I couldn't figure out how to get it up there.
I was gonna try and get it to the presentation.
Yeah.
It would just move. Download file,
With that,
in the download file. Right up at the top on the right. There you go.
all right. We held our final open house, last week on September 13th for the citywide traffic study. The open house consisted of a brief presentation, which we'll go through here in just a little bit. And then we ended with a brief question and answer format, where we did have a few questions on what was presented. And then we really moved into an open house and discussed the individual recommendations, with some of the folks that attended. Go ahead and turn it over here. Patrick, you were supposed to be giving the presentation for the final meeting tonight. Then I'll follow with some comments after that.
Thanks, Matt. Hey, everyone. That was briefly kind of run through the presentation we gave last Wednesday.
Matt. Matt.
That attended. A little bit, like Matt mentioned, we are at our fourth meeting here on the very right of last week. So it's really kind of the final report here, which we've done in several weeks. But all in all the information has come together really nicely and in a very presentable format. A little bit at the meeting, we touched base on some overall recommendations, just kind of from a high level. I know there's going to be a presentation and some other information out on the city's website that will kind of dive deeper in the detail, but we want to keep it kind of at a really high level. We talked a little bit about this, the strategic planning, it's kind of how we rank the improvements based on the results we're seeing. And then the prioritization of those projects. I just kind of try to spread them out in near term versus long term timetables for the improvements. And then talk a little bit about that final development. A little bit, the overall study area, we looked at 37 intersections combined. On the right, for the 13 intersections, we kind of were able to keep those at a high level based on the initial review. They were really not coming up with very many issues that we could see based on our analysis. We did take a deeper dive into the 24 intersections that you see here on your left and started coming up with just another layer of refinement to the study. A little bit based on the study, if you see the boxes right there, we went ahead and kind of tried to group, and you see the numbers across the box. So those are the number of intersections or policy issues or stuff, not issues, but policy things that could be put in place to help improve the overall traffic flow in Johnston. So if you look, we kind of categorize them in those four categories of the box and associate numbers of the numbers that are we need to look at other locations. A little bit on the overall kind of the planning, what we tried to do is really kind of rank or look at these 6 areas of focus at the locations that were coming up with some concerns. And really, if you look at the overall operations and capacities, the main focus there was looking on like the level of service, and I'll always talk about this a number of times, the level of service stays throughout. And look also at the amount of delay at an intersection. Crash frequencies, the Iowa DOT, we look at the number of crashes to begin with, and then jumping over to the potential for crash reduction. The Iowa DOT has a PCR value that we can assign based on what we're seeing, so that there's some recommended improvements based on that PCR value. So that was again taken into account. And then really just the last 3 items across the bottom there is really feedback that we received online and in the public meetings, we're able to kind of pull away into everything. And then just really some of the challenges that we site specific based on our initial reviews and input from the city staff. And then just really kind of figuring out how would these fold into a CIP plan. If you look at some of these improvements are projected out 15 to 25 years plus. Also. So a little bit about the implementation plan. Again, up here on the top, you see the boxes there where we recommend geometric improvements, some modifications to the existing signal system, and some policy procedure type issues, or improvements that we can make or put in place to help communicate with the public, see social media channels, and then just 3 areas that we really need to investigate more. You can see on the left here kind of how we coin those or group those in areas of like 1 to 3 years, which we refer to as immediate term, and then long term, being out to that 15 to 20. But here's just kind of an overall map of the areas start popping up for improvements. You kind of see here, this is 86th Street here on the left, Marley Road right down the right here. And we went ahead and used the traffic cones from red down to green. Good news is there's no urgent need right now, but there is just kind of start keeping an eye on some of the intersections. And one thing, I just came up with a meeting the other night, is we have a lot of assumptions that go into traffic. I'm not gonna say it's like rainfall events or whatever, but there's some, good estimations that are going on. So, a little bit about some of these improvements is if our recommendations, if our assumptions that went into the model hold true, these would be the areas that we would expect to see issues come up as traffic that starts to grow throughout the city. So the timing of this, is kind of based on how that growth goes, if they slow down, that's gonna stretch out. If they speed up, that could accelerate things a little bit. This kind of gives you an idea of the corridors, based on a rank, low, all the way up to urgent, both at intersections as well as corridors. And this is just an example. We'll dive into a few of these. We're not going to get into all of them. We'll be here for
Hey, Patrick, can you just go back one slide? So it says in the corridor improvements, it says 2 that are marked high
yes.
in the orange. And as I look at the map, I almost see 1, or is that 2 segments? Where am I missing?
It is 2 segments, it is broken, Merle Bay is actually broken. Johnston Drive, Pioneer Parkway, and then Pioneer Parkway.
Okay, so that's the 2, okay, all right. And so that's,
And a lot of that has to do with access management,
Sure.
been implementing those improvements going up the corridor.
yeah, I was just looking to see if there was something that was missing. That makes sense.
So here's an example of an intersection on Marley Road, Northwest Second Avenue. Just from the initial, is really taking a look at that, doing some reconfiguration with the existing lane configurations out there. And then also make some modifications to the pedestals and the location of the traffic signal that's on there. That's a relatively low piece of hanging fruit there at $75,000. But long term, and that's a ways out, 15 plus years in the future. I think Councilman Mark asked this question before.
Many times. When can we get around that?
So, based on the need here, we did a preliminary layout on what put it around about like there. But the good news there'd be very minimal existing right-of-way impacts, needs there to go ahead and do that, so.
I think it needs to be bigger, more time.
I was just gonna say.
If we can have the largest intersection. in the
There's
world.
more green.
But anyway, that's just an example here that Holly and Jake was on that they can do an example of what we do. Another thing, a couple of text to are pretty similar, but in Northwest Second Avenue, I go through this intersection probably 4 to 6 times a day, 8 times a day sometimes. And this is really about getting some positive offset with the left turn lanes on 62nd Avenue. Look in the westbound direction, we have dual movement to go southbound. And we have a little bit of an extra white island in there that was landscaped when we did the project back in the early 2000s. In the eastbound direction, we only took the one single left turn lane, so we're going from westbound to northbound. Well, there's some site triangles, site visibility issues that try to prevent doing that in the design criteria. So it's just really kind of getting those left turn lanes moved over as far as we can, so the driver has a little better visibility flipping around. So opposing vehicles want to make it worse. Similar situation up at 62nd and 100. This one, the island's not quite as big up there, we only have single last year, but again, we do some positive offsets. And this little, sketch up here shows you kind of where we can go ahead and stretch those out.
So, Patrick, I just want to understand, so basically, you'll basically restripe, right?
We would have to put some, additional concrete in and move those inside curves up against that left turn lane and push those over. I think the current design standard, you have to have 4-foot minimum, probably like 6 foot in there. So if you had to have a pedestrian refuge out there, you have enough room that pedestrian point in there. It's still quasi protected from being in there. Thanks. Here's an example of the corridor on 86th Street. I believe there's 6 signals up and down through that corridor. This is an example where we go through and do some retimings there, as well as update the traffic signaling equipment in the cabinets to today's technology. Traffic and slowing down the corridor. We were talking about this in the office. I don't think we've ever gone back and retimed this corridor since the high school. Just think about traffic that's changed out there since the high school was moved. And this is just an example of what I. Again, 62nd Avenue and 94th Street, that's where the signal's at the midpoint there. Again, just updating some equipment and as well as timing updates there. I will be touching briefly on the policy and procedure recommendations, and this is just really, with the city's social media channel, there's just good ways to constantly get out there and just randomly start painting, reminding them how to drive roundabouts. Is there anything that's some policy we should put in place when we have construction activity on certain corridors? And then just the traffic calming policy. I know with the rewrite of the zoning, the code there, there's some initial recommendations incorporated. So it's just really, I think speeding in neighborhoods is something we've heard quite a bit in the public meetings. So how do we slow that down? So again, just some things there to be able to incorporate social media channels and have that positive influence out there. And then a little bit on the last one there, again, this is pretty low priority, but at 66 with Weaver, that intersection, again, as traffic grows, that intersection probably going to be the first one that's going to rear its head, and just on how that will function. So again, just kind of coordinate with the other agencies as improvements are being made. So a little bit, a couple other things here. I came out to some further investigations out of the report, and I know I think we're starting to look into after we get this report. Taking a dive into this, the school operations out of the school buildings. And then working, eventually southbound on 86th Street there is to take and pull that right turn lane all the way back through 86 and 54, where the Kings is going in there. We have a long right turn lane that's southbound to North Park, and then we have a long right turn lane that goes in southbound to westbound on ramp of 8035. If you look, we kind of have some lane balance issues right there. Everybody that's wanting to go westbound the interstate, everybody that's wanting to go across the interstate, take the loop eastbound, everybody's in that southbound right turn lane. So we can kind of pull that off, that would go ahead and give us some extra capacity through there. That's some of the stuff that came out of the report. Again, deliverables here. And again, this will all be uploaded, and there'll be some presentation that will be out there that we can guide further in on. People can zoom in on the intersection, but just getting into the intersection evaluations, that will include the geometry improvements, safety recommendations, as well as operations, and then just the overall recommendations. What's the proposed improvements
that are needed and crossing associated. Similarly, on the corridor, it will be the same on that aspect. On the corridor, like I mentioned earlier, that would also include access management, access points. I think that's it. If you have any questions, try to answer.
Real briefly, I know we still have one more item on the agenda here. But the final study should be in here by the end of October. The deliverables, what we saw here is most likely we'll see. The one thing on the, we do have traffic counts, that's what the boxes and the numbers are on those diagrams. They count for 2020. So we do have those, and we'll be able to balance check to make sure that as we move forward, that we're seeing those numbers or we're not, which would like happen, so we would prolong those. One thing that I want to touch on is with the amount of feedback that we did receive during public comment, we are doing an additional traffic study around the schools, all of the schools, with the exception of the high school. That one we did not see the traffic issues that we do around the colleges. So that we should have completed by the end of the year or the end of January, and then we will come back with a little presentation on that. Council as well as share with you.
Pat, did you want to mention our 17-year traffic engineers new opportunity?
Yeah, so Molly let us know about 3-4 weeks ago that she's going to be taking out of the city of Des Moines. They ran up their traffic operations ITS system that they have. So last Friday was actually her last day, so that's why I'm here tonight. She, I pretty much a unicorn something. She's had a lot of knowledge in the area of all the different projects she's worked on. So, back. Good position to respond.
Great job. Category, next item.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on then to the item 3C, which is a closed session for Iowa Code Section 21.5(1)J. To discuss the purchase of particular real estate only where premature exposure be reasonably expected to increase the price governmental body would have to pay for that property. The necessary according to our section 4 under this paragraph should be available for public examination. Transaction discussed. We have a motion going to closed session. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Is it Cindy or Sam?
Sam.
Sam, vote please.
Burkhart,
Here.
Cope,
Yes.
Ready,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Motion.
Just